Okay. Welcome to this meeting of the Mid-Suffolk Development Control B Committee. I am Councillor Dave Muller and I will be chairing the meeting today. May I first please read some domestic arrangements. Please do not interrupt speakers or hold separate conversations whilst others are speaking. If you are attending the meeting to speak and persistently interrupt the meeting, you may be asked to leave. Please ensure your mobile phones and laptops are on silent. We will be using e-voting for this meeting on the modern.gov app, so please could members make sure they are logged in and ready to use the app. The Council, members of the public and the press may record, film, photograph or broadcast this meeting when the public and the press are not lawfully excluded. I'd like to make some introductions. We have the Area Planning Manager, Gemma Walker, the Legal Advisor, Ian Dupre. We have the Case Officers. We've got Jasmine Wyard, Daniel Cameron and Masa Cavani, and the Governance Officer is Alicia Norman. Can I move to the agenda, please? Item 1, apologies for absence and substitutions, please.
Thank you, Chair. We have apologies this morning from Councillor Guthrie, with Councillor Humphrey substituting, and we also have apologies from Councillor Gould, with Councillor Haddingham substituting. Thank you, Chair.
Item number 2, to receive any declarations of disclosable pecuniary interests, other registerable interests or non-registerable interests by members. Are there any? Councillor Haddingham, please.
Thanks. I know the applicants on, well, it's the first one now, the Davidsons, and I know Humphrey's son.
Thank you very much.
Oh, right, we'll use this one. Chair, just briefly, I'm obviously not here as a decision maker, I'm as your advisor. I'm just going to say I'm sure a few people saw me say hello to the agent for Mr. Rankin, who's here on Fennings Farm application. We knew each other, worked together in local government in another place a few years ago, but that won't stop either of us doing our job properly today, but I thought I'd better just mention it.
Are there any to declare? Yes, I've had one. Okay, very much. Thank you very much. Which one?
Chair, we should declare which application we've been looking on,
surely.
It's item C.
Yes, 7C. Everyone was 7. And the one I had was Massey Davidson Limited. Yep, same one. Okay, thank you very much. Okay, declarations of personal site visits. No. Okay, item 5. Confirmation of the minutes of the meeting held on the 1st of February 2023. Are there any points regarding the accuracy of the minutes? No. Okay, could I have a proposer, please? Thank you. Councillor Norris, I think you were first, and a seconder, please. Councillor Caston. I now ask the Governance Officer, can you please conduct the electronic vote? Thank you.
Thank you, Chair. That vote is now in progress. Councillor Warboys, do you want me to take your vote verbally, because it's not come through for me? That's fine. Thank you. Thank you, Chair. So that makes 6 votes for and 2 abstentions. That's carried.
Right. I'll now move on to item 6, to receive notification of petitions in accordance with the Council's petition scheme.
None received, Chair.
7, I'll now start with the scheduled planning applications. We will be hearing item 7C first, and then we'll have 7A and then 7B in that order. So 7C is DC 21 06824, land at Fennings Farm, Pixie Green, Stradbroke, and I'd now like to invite the Case Officer, Masha Cavani, to introduce the application to the committee. Thank you, Masha.
Good morning, everyone. Thank you, Chair. Oh, what did I do? Is that noise? Oh, thank you. This is not... So just one second, I think we're having some technical issues. I'll try it now. Thank you. The application site is situated in the countryside, and the proposal is for the expansion of an existing poultry operation at Fennings Farm. The proposal includes 6 number of poultry houses with associated admin blocks, feed bins, and ancillary development. This shows the wider context of the site within the countryside. There are no immediate residential neighbours, with the exception of those which are associated with the farm operations. This slide shows the location of the only public footpath near the site to the east. And this slide shows the land in the ownership of the applicant and also the access. The farm would be accessed via the existing farm access, which already serves the existing sheds and farm. Fennings Farm also hosts a builder's yard as well as the poultry farm. The surrounding land is used largely for arable farming. This slide shows the location of the only heritage assets within close proximity, and it shows the distances to the site. This slide shows the location of the residential neighbours closest to the site. The ones outlined in purple shows the properties that are already associated with the farm operations. This slide shows the other residential neighbours which are within close proximity of the site. Noise and odour, amongst other environmental impact, are regulated by the Environmental Agency. Permitting regime. The application is accompanied by industry standard relevant surveys. This slide shows the building. The buildings will be purpose-built, steel-framed structures. The units are set back from the road with minimal visual impact. As noted earlier, the only vantage point to the development is the public footpath to the east. As you can see, there is some landscaping already proposed for the site, which surrounds the units, new units, and also shows the location of the existing units. These are some photos from the site. This is approaching from the west. As you can see, the site is heavily surrounded by existing trees and vegetation, and any kind of views would be obstructed by the existing structures on site, such as this minor visual impact as a result of the development. We have also been provided with some drone photos by the applicant, which shows the wider context of the site and also shows how it's encapsulated by already existing landscape surrounding the site. And this is another photo of the existing units. The proposed units would be similar in a style, scale, and design, albeit be better built and modern. This is an agricultural development supported by our local plan policies and MPPF, and as such is supported in principle. The proposal is also an EIA development, which means it is regulated by the environmental permitting regime. The application is accompanied by a comprehensive environmental statement, noise impact assessment, and so on. It is the environmental permitting regulations that deals with the use, treatment, storage, and disposal of waste and emissions from industrial processes. This includes noise and odour. All technical matters, including highways and ecology, have been subject to consultation with our statutory consultees, and no objections have been raised, subject to conditions. Matters of water usage, including wash water and drinking water, have also been subject to discussions and consultations with Essex and Suffolk Water. Their response concludes that the proposal is acceptable, subject to the recommended condition. Based on this assessment and based on the recommendation from our expert colleagues, the application is recommended for approval, subject to conditions. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you very much, Massa. Do we have questions for the planning officer? Councillor Stringer, please.
Just very briefly, just want to go back on to, you said that there were no objections. But there are objections on the case file, are they not?
Yes, but
Okay.
from our statutory consultees in terms of technical matters.
Right. So the Water Authority is not a statutory consultee?
They are, in some cases, statutory consultees, and we have consulted them, and they have provided their comments.
And they did not object, no?
They have raised concerns, and they have given us their position. However, they said to overcome the objections, they recommended a gramping condition, which the applicant has agreed to.
So there then was objections? Yes.
Yes.
Right, okay, thank you.
Thank you. On page 53, below the first paragraph, there's an officer note. The applicant has informed the officer they'll provide clarity on matters of water ahead of committee. Has that been received?
Sorry, just give me 1 second. Yes, so I have had recent correspondence with the agent, with the applicant, and they have provided us further information in terms of they would be happy to agree another condition in terms of water usage on site, which I'm happy to read to the members. But this has also been uploaded on our website, so it's public documentation.
Beg your pardon. I think Master just answered this. This Grampian condition about the scheme for water neutrality. This is something that we've got to work out the terms of in this meeting.
This is a pre-commencement condition, so perhaps that's something that the applicant could further discuss or offer further clarification, but this is something that is going to have to be agreed before the operation is in use.
Okay, and my second question is about the wastewater, and there's some discussion in the documents about the sort of number of journeys, and there's questions being raised about where it's actually going to go. Is that reasonable for us to ask that this is specified within the application?
This matter is dealt with by the Environmental Agency's permitting regime. This includes the wastewater from the application, from the proposal. I can read you something from the environmental statement that we have been provided by the applicant, and it's been on the file. That might be helpful.
Thank you.
So the surface water drainage system would drain clean surface water runoff only. When the poultry houses and access are cleaned, a diverter valve would direct a washdown water into sealed below-ground holding tanks to be removed from the site and disposed of by licensed washing contractors. At the end of each 6 to 8 week growing period, broilers will be removed from the houses with used litter taken away from the farm in converted trailers, and the empty houses will then be power washed, disinfected, and ready for the arrival of the next crop. At this point, outflow from the subterranean water storage tank will be stopped, and the wastewater subsequently exported from the farm in a sealed tank lorries.
Okay, so it's licensed operators.
That's right.
Thank you.
Okay, then I will move on to the public speakers. And first I'd like to introduce the Parish Council, Odile Leyden, please. Hopefully I pronounced that right. Apologies if I didn't. You have 3 minutes.
Morning, it's Odile Vladon.
Thank you.
Thank you. Horham and Atherington, Denham, Stradbroke Parish Councils and Town Council have all submitted concerns regarding this application. The impacts on the parishes will be different, but the concerns do highlight the need to review the wider implications of developments which form part of a supply chain for a larger industry. Stradbroke Parish Council supports development. In fact, the neighbourhood plan contains proposals for over 250 new homes. The plan also has policies which support the expansion of commercial activities. However, the Parish Council is clear. All proposals brought forward must be sustainable and must comply with the policies in the plan. The Parish Council has reviewed the documentation supporting this application and found that the reports are lacking in full detail and do not reflect the application as it stands today. The area assessed for the ecology report does not include the site for the proposed reservoir. The County Council require a surface water management plan, but the one included in the flood risk report is out of date, as it was written before the water mitigation proposals. The noise impact assessment fails to reference the existing Section 106 agreement in place. It does not assess the noise from the proposed heat exchangers and seems to indicate that there will be no increase in HGVs. The ammonia and odour assessments both note that heat exchangers will be fitted to the proposed and existing units, yet the plan only shows them installed against the proposed. A 29% reduction in ammonia emissions has been applied in calculations, but it is unclear why, as the applicant hasn't decided which heat exchanger to use. The reports still do not comply with the current case law with regards to the management of both wastewater and manure. There are no plans submitted that show how the rainwater harvesting will be retrofitted to the existing units or how the surface water drainage will be reworked. Given the Environment Agency statement issued on the 10th of February that the region remains in drought, the Parish Council is concerned whether there will in fact be sufficient rainfall to fill the reservoir. The applicant states that the location avoids encroachment into the wider agricultural unit and the loss of Grade 3 good quality agricultural land by siting adjacent to existing farm buildings. However, this is no longer the case as the site has become larger given the requirements for a reservoir and associated filtration equipment. This proposal does not comply with the policies Strad 11 and 13 and, as noted by Place Services, is not in accordance with NPPF paragraph 206. Any contribution this development may make to the public economy would also be available in a more sustainable location. The Parish Council notes that a proposal for 20 units at the airfield at Methwold is being considered by West Norfolk District Council. This is a more sustainable location and will bring forward the same tangible assets. The Parish Council reiterates this objection and recommends refusal.
Thank you very much. Do you have questions, please, for Councillor Humphreys?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. You used the word sustainable. My question is this. I can't find why it's not sustainable. Why do you feel it's not sustainable?
Because of the water usage in a water vulnerable zone.
Thank you.
Because of the fact that the waste management isn't properly clarified in accordance with the Squire versus Shropshire case or the Keating versus East Suffolk case. There is absolutely no, the policy, the documents submitted are not up to date and do not reflect what you're considering today.
It was just to come back actually and ask you a question, if you believe that sustainable actually means to be able to maintain at a certain rate or level. Is that what you're trying to say?
Sorry,
it can't be maintained.
I couldn't hear you. Sorry.
Are you saying that it can't be maintained at a certain rate or level, which is what sustainable means?
I don't believe the water can, no.
Okay, thank you.
Please. Councillor Hanningham, please.
I'd really like to know what Masha has to say in answer, if that is allowed.
Thank you, Chair. Well, the question of water usage has been subject to many discussions with the applicant and also Essex and Suffolk Water. So we have a condition here that doesn't allow the operation to go ahead without being fulfilled. It's that Grampian condition. So basically, the applicant needs to demonstrate that the operation is water neutral. And with that in mind, we are happy to support it as officers, because if that condition can be fulfilled, there's no other reason to hold the approval. Thank you.
Councillor Stringer.
That leads, am I allowed to ask a question of the officer? Because that extra bit of information. So the amount of vehicle movements to achieve water sustainability, because you've been talking about holding tanks and all this stuff, you know, when the things wash down, etc., etc. And obviously these birds have got a drink and all this kind of stuff. Do we know how many vehicle movements it will take to achieve water sustainability? And has that vehicle number been accounted for in the traffic assessment?
I can check that, thank you, Councillor. I can check that, but what I can tell you that the finer details of that condition, we don't know yet. We don't know exactly how, but we know that this is a pre-commencement condition, so the details will come forward before the development is then commenced. And also in terms of total number of traffic generated as a result of the development has been calculated as 4.7%. So with the existing operation, when these 6 units are added, the total number of car generated as a result would be 4.7, which is not a significant number. Thank you.
So you have calculated the amount of vehicle movements it will take to hit? Because you've calculated 4.7%. I don't understand. You're telling us that you don't know how many vehicles it will take to achieve water sustainability, but you say you have calculated the vehicle number and it's 4.7%.
Thank you. In relation to water usage, because we don't know the details of how the water neutrality can be achieved. That detail we don't know. But in terms of the traffic as a result of the development, in terms of HEV movements and deliveries and so on and so forth, this has been extensively explored in the transport management. But in terms of water, how water neutrality can be achieved, that detail we don't know yet. So that's something that has to be achieved pre-commencement.
Can just qualify, that may involve more than 4.whatever% of vehicle movements extra.
I don't know the answer to that question. That may be. Thank you.
Any further questions, please? Councillor Mellon, please.
Yeah, thank you, Chair. So a question for the public speaker. You mentioned Strad 13, which is one of the parts of your neighbourhood plan, and you said that this proposal does not meet the requirements of that. In what particular respects were you referring?
Well, Strad 13 has, as its first bullet point, the proposals are not significantly detrimental to the character of the wider countryside or the views across it. And Place Services have acknowledged that that is the case. We still maintain, the Parish Council still maintains that the highways are affected. However, the information from the Highways Authority is so vague, it's very hard to prove the impact that 2 HGVs mounting the pavement outside the primary school, that would have a severe or significant impact, because apparently it's an arbitrary number that somebody thinks of at the time they're assessing a planning application. There's no absolute definitive rule to follow. So we still believe that there is an impact on the highway, which is contrary to MPPF 110. Highways do not.
Questions? No? Okay, thank you very much. We'll then move on to the objector, Tanya Farrow, please, and you've got 3 minutes as well. Thank you.
I'm Councillor Tanya Farrow, Chair of Denham Parish Council. Denham Mill, which is cited in this application, is located on the Denham-Hoxton boundary. The Parish Council objected to this application primarily on the grounds of the detrimental impact of the additional volume of HGV traffic. However, the objection is not included in the Planning Committee report, and we felt it was important to highlight that industrial operations of this kind have clear planning impacts beyond the immediate vicinity of the site. Denham Mill has been subject to a planning contravention notice based on a suspected material change of use. The planning enforcement investigation has not yet concluded. The mill is classified as agricultural. Cranswick plc, who leased the mill, applied for an environmental permit to significantly increase output from the mill in April 2020. The H1 environmental impact assessment for the permit stated that there would be around 100 HGV movements per day. Surveys conducted by residents estimate that this figure is more than double the previous number of HG movements, and it has already been reached. Since the mill operations changed, the Parish Council has received multiple complaints about traffic incidents on the narrow rural roads, including near accidents with all manner of road users, as well as damage to roads, verges and traffic congestion. The Parish Council would like to make the following points. The environmental statement states that 30% of the feed will come from Denham Mill. However, it states that this is an estimate and the actual figure could be significantly higher. It should also be noted that the HGV movement cited only relates to the number of additional trips to the mill and then onwards to Fennings Farm. There will be an associated increase in HGV movements due to the increased volume of raw materials to provide these additional feeds. These have not been accounted for in the environmental statement nor the planning committee report. The transport assessment for this application states it should be noted that Denham Mill operates a one-way system with traffic routing in via Hoxton and leaving via Horham towards Fennings Farm. This is not factually correct and does not happen in practice. The operator of the mill has stated they cannot enforce this, leading to much wider highway and amenity impacts outside of Denham, including Horham, Hoxton and Stradbroke. The same document has an assessment of personal injury, which only looks at 2 points along the route, whereas further inspection of the same website shows that in the same 5-year period there were 2 serious incidents along the Chickering Road. This is a common access point for the Denham feed mill. This application has raised concerns about water usage, and there is currently a moratorium from Essex and Suffolk Water for new non-domestic uses in the Hartismere Water Resource Zone. As part of repurposing the mill, the production process was changed from dry millet to pellet feed production, which involves the use of steam in the conditioning process. Within this application, the planning officer has not adequately considered the in-combination effects of the proposed increased feed production to support the additional birds. In conclusion, Denham Parish Council objects to this planning application on the basis that it does not represent sustainable development. The adverse impacts on neighbouring parishes significantly and demonstrably outweigh the benefits of this application, and the Council asks the committee to refuse it.
Very much. Do we have any questions, please, for Tanya Farrow? Councillor Haddingham, then Councillor Mellon, please.
Thank you. I'm not sure if this is going to be for the speaker or for Masha, but on page 65 we've got a map and it's showing that the route to the feed mill is 9 lorries a day. Are you saying that it's going to be more? That's the maximum they're talking about.
So I'm saying that on the basis of that, that's literally just talking about the movements to and from there to the farm. Obviously, that's going to result in an increase in feed production necessary to support those units, and none of the assessment of that has been included. So, you know, we're obviously increasing the production of feed from that mill, and that's going to increase the number of HGV movements.
So you're not saying there is going to be more than 9? You're not saying this is wrong, you're just saying that...
I'm saying the evidence isn't there to suggest that everything's being considered in that assessment.
Yeah, I'm not sure if this is a question for the officer or maybe for Ian, I'm not sure. So where the implications of an application affect a site outside of the boundary of the application, how do we have to consider that as a planning committee?
Sorry, I didn't quite catch the question, if you don't mind repeating, please.
So, I mean, clearly what we've just heard is about this, mostly about the site of Denham Mill, which is not part of the red line boundary. So how do we have to take that into account? I'm just asking for some guidance, really.
I think I will wait for Ian to go first, please.
Yeah, I think you will consider the effect if you making your decision. I'm sure you know very well. All members of this committee know very well the statutory test about policy and material considerations. You will consider the impact of granting this decision on generally. So there may be a point. I mean, if the point was about, well, I was making notes and listening. I think I'm not altogether sure I've got the full text, as it were, of the concern that was expressed about. Was it about a combination of this permission if it's granted and activities on another site? Was that how you understood it, Councillor Millen?
Yeah, clearly the feed mill, it's ancillary to this, but it's not in the location that we're dealing with. So I'm just trying to understand how much the concern about an off-site operation should be a consideration here.
Thank you, Ian. Can I
Am I
comment on
making
that?
myself clear?
Yes, I think it's quite clear. You are talking about the cumulative impact of the development. Yes, we have to consider that as a planning matter as well. So we have to look at the wider picture to see what other operations are in the area. This is an agricultural development. It's a well-established scene and activity in the countryside. The traffic surrounding Fennings Farm, it's low. It's not a highly trafficked road. The road network is low. It's part of Suffolk lorry route already. So what we are here to consider is that what is the increase, and is it significant and dangerous enough for us to refuse it based on that? And based on the evidence that we've been provided, crash map data and Suffolk County Council highways, no, there's no evidence to suggest that this development would lead to a significant harm and a danger onto the road network, or will generate such traffic that is going to be so significant that it's going to be significantly harmful and should be refused based on that. I think that might answer your question. Is that helpful? Thank you.
There is another reason why you might want to take all information into account, and that's by making sure you've got the correct conditions on any approval. So it isn't just, shall we refuse or shall we approve? You can approve with conditions. And in fact, it's suggested a Grampian condition here. And Grampian conditions are for areas outside of the red line. So are we, well, I mean, that's my understanding of the Grampian condition. I think perhaps we all ought to probably understand what they mean before we look at imposing one. I thought that a Grampian condition was for land outside of the red line. There's one proposed here. So is this document suggesting we can impose conditions upon a mill or whatever that's not part of the red line application site? I think we perhaps need to know that before we, so we can fully understand what our role is here today. Thank you.
Thanks, Master. No, it's fine. So on a couple of those bits, really. So in terms of the wider impact, yes, you can consider the wider impact. You know, when we think highways, we do have to think about the network. So there is that wider implication. There is that cumulative impact we can look at. There is a degree of caution. If we are looking at one specific feed mill, we can't restrict the manager, owner, occupier of Fennings Farm to using that feed mill. So there is always going to be some degree of differences with what they do use and what they could use. But yes, in general, the cumulative impact of the traffic could be relevant to the consideration. So yes, there are some issues there that we would need to consider cumulatively. In terms of the Grampian condition, so we can require works on land that's not controlled by the applicant, or that it might require consent of another person or body. That sometimes fails the test of reasonableness, but we can put that condition on in essentially a negative form. That's the Grampian condition. So you're stopping development authorised by the Planning Commission until something has taken place. So in this case, what we're saying is that the development can't take place until we have got the scheme for water neutrality. Now, we shouldn't use the conditions where there's no prospect of this happening. So, I can't think of a good example at this time, but if we didn't think that a water neutrality scheme was possible, then that would be not a reasonable condition. However, what we're seeing and the information that we've had so far and in discussion with Essex and Suffolk Water,
is that the suggestion is there is enough information and enough reasonable certainty that they could provide for the water neutrality by the various measures as set out in the condition from Essex and Suffolk Water in order to provide that neutral position. So sorry, that was a bit of two answers, but hopefully that covered both points.
Any further questions? No? Okay, thank you very much, Tanya. I'd now like to move on to supporter. Matthew Ward, please. You two have 3 minutes. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Just a bit of background. So I'm a director of Crown. I've been in there since 1985, so I understand the history of the business and the growth of the industry. We sold out to Cranswick, as you know, 2016, and the brand new factory was built in 2019. To operate that, we operate out of something like 75 locations. 20 of those are breeding farms, 55 of those are the broiler farms, one of which is the farm in question at Presingfield. The Davison family have been and are very important in our chain because they develop sites for us and very instrumental in the improvements in shed design that we want for a modern chicken growing world. What I would say, the sites that we've developed in the last 5-10 years are in a different league to what was done in the 70s and the 80s. And what do I mean by that? I do mean the heat recovery. The modern sites are using 50% of the energy to heat them. And compared to the really old sites, I would actually say it's 5-fold. And by that I mean the old breeze block sites that have just about all gone now. Heat, we've just gone through last year, those 2 days at 40 degrees C. We've had modern sheds, and I can tell you where they take out 10 degrees C, and those birds stayed alive, not an issue. You can't really retrofit those in old facilities. We need modern facilities to be competitive. The rainwater harvesting is being rolled out on these modern sites, and that is the way to go and how some of this will be tackled. Of course, biosecurity, the drainage, the modern sites, you've heard about tanks, that's all part of modern sites, which is what we need for the future. Now, why do we need these sites? One of the things that's not been mentioned so far is, you'll have all seen in the press, the Better Chicken Commitment, BCC. We are being led down that route. You know, the supermarkets are wanting a commitment. What does that mean to us? It means a stocking rate reduction from 38 kg maximum to 30 kg. That's 21% reduction. So if we're going to stay as significant today and meet the BCC commitment, we need more space. So what I'm saying is, this is not all about expansion. So in terms of, do we need more feed because of this? No, we don't. We don't place more chicks, we don't mill more feed. It's about keeping us sustainable with the space that we've got. Thank you.
Councillor Caston.
Thank you very much. Could you explain the relationship Cranswick has with this site? Is it, I've got a bit confused, is it your site or are you in?
So we look after it, so we rent it. The Davisons build sites, we rent sites.
Yeah.
But they are very, in East Anglia, not just for us, other firms as well, we develop these modern systems. And it's the last 3-4 years on cooling these sheds has been a changer. It's a different world. And we have to say, the summer we've just had, we were very successful in what we've done.
So there's no chance that any of the feed would come out of a different mill?
It's not about expansion. We won't, no mill expansion will come.
No, but I mean, the unit wouldn't change its feed provider. It's always
Correct, no, no.
it's your site, your mill. It's always going to come
Correct.
from. Yeah. Okay. Thank you very much.
Questions, please. Councillor Mellon, then Councillor Stringer.
Yeah, just want to understand about the rainwater harvesting. Clearly, that's a good thing, but just is that for the chickens to drink? I mean, is that something that works in this age of biosecurity and bird flu?
Yeah, so we have about, I think in our business, there's about 3 sites where rainwater harvesting works. And yeah, it's for them to drink, but obviously it's treated. So it's, yeah, it goes into a reservoir, but then before it's pumped around the site, it is treated.
And a question again about the, you said that this is not about expansion, so you're going to knock down the old sheds because they're no longer
No,
fit for purpose?
we need more space to give the chickens more space. So the stocking rate.
So there won't be any more chickens going through than what you have at the moment? It's just
There will be on that farm, yes.
So you'll
Because
need
it's
more
6 more sheds, but somewhere across the business we will reduce the stocking rate.
So you'll need more feed for more chickens?
No. No, the amount of birds we place.
On that site?
On that site, of course we will, because it's a big expansion.
Right, so it's slightly different to what you said a minute ago, which is that you won't be needing more food.
So the stocking rates, if we go down the better chicken, and we have got sites in our business which are stocked, in the microphone, which are stocked for BCC at 30 kg. So if the industry moves this way, we need 25% more space to keep the same numbers.
Yeah, okay, I understand about the wider industry. I think we're just trying to deal with this site, and I think from what you've said, there will be an expansion. There'll be more.
Yeah, so more feed will be going to that farm.
Right. Okay.
Yes, correct.
Thank you, Chair.
I think Councillor Mellon just extracted the answer I was trying to get.
Do we have any further questions for Mr. Ward? Councillor Caston, then, please.
I do have a question on the total feed storage capacity on the site, but should I wait for the applicant, or should I ask that question now? Shall I ask that after the applicant? Yeah. I'll wait till the applicant speaks.
Okay.
Thank you.
Any further questions at all? No? Thank you very much indeed, Mr. Ward. Therefore, I'd now like to call the agent, Mr. Johnny Rankin, please, and you two have 3 minutes.
Good morning, members of the Planning Committee. With thanks to the officer for the comprehensive presentation. As you will have seen within the committee report, we have worked with the planning officer and the relevant consultees to ensure that there are no significant environmental impacts arising from the proposal. This is reflected in the lack of any objections from statutory consultees and the officer's recommendation of approval. The operational sheds at Fennings Farm feed into the regional poultry network, inclusive of the Cranswick processing plant at Eye. The regional network employs more than 1,500 people in and around mid-Suffolk, including at the processing plant, feed mills and farm. There is also a host of other businesses in the area which are reliant on the poultry industry to sustain their levels of employment. A key example of this would be the poultry house construction business owned and operated by the applicant. The business employs over 60 people full-time, with over 40 of those living in mid-Suffolk. Members will also be aware of ongoing food shortages, from eggs to salad items more recently. Homegrown food production in sustainable locations, such as Fennings Farm, will avoid future shortages of chicken. In compliance with the NPPF, the proposal will allow for the existing farm operation to grow, resulting in 3 full-time managers and part-time staff. The Parish Council have raised concerns in respect of highways and odour. Whilst we understand the Council's reasons for raising concerns, we do not believe they are founded, and it is worth reiterating the operational 9 sheds are not subject to complaint or causing highways issues. Both the Environmental Health Officer and the County Council Highways Officer have reviewed the proposed sheds and have responded with no objection. Essex and Suffolk Water raised concerns in respect of water supply. The applicant and planning officers have met with Essex and Suffolk Water to ensure their concerns are addressed. This has resulted in the rainwater harvesting condition as set out in the officer's report to committee, as well as the comprehensive environmental impact assessment accompanying the application. The applicant has discussed and is agreeable to all the conditions set out in the officer's report, adding further controls and assurances to any planning consent granted. With thanks for your consideration today, and we respectfully request that you resolve to approve the application in line with the officer's recommendation. The applicant and myself are here and happy to answer any questions you may have.
Please, Councillor Caston, please.
Thank you. I'll do that question now then. On this, just on the new site, what would be the total in tonnes capacity for storing feed? I've seen the shed on there. It looks like each shed has 3 9-tonne bins or so, but could you just tell me how much that...
Yeah, sure. So as you pointed to, there is grain silos on plan, on would-be approved plans, and tonnage-wise, 28 tonnes in the 9 silos. Apologies, 28 in each bin.
Yeah, okay. Yeah, I was going to say 20, that wouldn't even get you for a day on the new site. But so is there anything, the second question, is there any barriers to abstracting water for this site, and any barriers to licensed abstraction?
Yes, in a word, yes, and that is the basis of the Grampian condition. We met with Essex and Suffolk Water in the Hartsmere zone. There's effectively a moratorium on any further extraction licences. That's why you see the Grampian condition, and that is to make sure that rainwater harvesting meets the demands, meets the supply required. Now, the operational sheds, or 9 of them, they don't have harvesting at present. It's something that operationally the applicant and Cranswick are deploying. So we know we've got a appropriate surface area. There is an attenuation pond on plan. Our homework, if you like, to fulfil that condition is to ensure that that rainwater harvesting meets the supply. Put short, if we can't do that, and I should say we're utterly assured we can, then we can't build the sheds. That's the nature of the condition. So it's a very high level of assurance for the parish, for members of this committee.
Thank you.
Yeah, thank you. I think it would have been really helpful, because I know we're going through a regime of trying not to put too much paper in front of members, but I think it would have been really helpful if we'd have had the original objection from the Water Authority, because all of the questions that we're asking are in that objection, and that would have been really helpful. That aside, so we're going to harvest rainwater to basically feed and wash the site, because we wash it every 6 to 8 weeks. So how many days will the lagoon last for if we have a drought, as we had last year?
Well, if you built the lagoon in drought conditions, it wouldn't last for any days.
Yeah.
We're hoping to build it before any drought condition, and obviously taking advantage of the preceding rainfall. So if you started with a 0 baseline, 0. But that, again, would be an operational problem. You wouldn't fill the sheds without the lagoon being in situ, and there's a condition that requires that.
Yes, I understand that. I didn't ask the question correctly. Assume you build the lagoon, assume we get enough rainfall to fill it, assume then it stops raining like it did last year. How many days will that lagoon last?
Yeah, the point is that it's circumstantial, but it could last several crops. It won't go on indefinitely.
No.
But you know, it's an impossible question to answer at this stage.
Is it?
Like, I can't tell you from point A, when that lagoon's in situ and full, I can't then tell you, but it will be a requirement of the applicant to have water for those birds. They couldn't put birds in there if they couldn't keep them watered.
No, I totally understand that. I find it difficult that you don't know the water use.
We know and have submitted the water use explicitly.
Okay.
It's all before you in the submitted documents. Yeah, but put simply, operation can't continue if there isn't enough water for the birds.
Yeah, I get that. I totally understand that. I was just trying to seek how long the lagoon proposed would run the site for in terms of washing and feeding the birds and watering the birds. Am I not being clear? What I'm trying to ascertain is, because if the lagoon is empty and you're running, you'll be tankering water in and out. That's how water works. Our local waterworks has 2 lorry movements a day just to keep it topped up. And if we're in an area that has no water, it's quite simple. Yeah, we're in an area where the water authority is saying we do not have enough water to sustain this application.
Yeah, so just to correct
and I'm just trying to work out, is the lagoon going to last a year if it's full? Great, for every single thing to do with the operation, or might it last a few months and then we have to revert to tankers and bringing water in and out?
Yeah, so water isn't tankered in for drinking. There's an existing water supply. The lagoon would have a capacity of 16,000 metres squared with an annual usage requirement of 12,000, not squared, cubed, apologies. So there is, in that lagoon alone, in excess of the requirement for the operation of the site. You know, taking that snapshot measurement. Just to clarify, the existing site has, obviously, water supply, more than sufficient to serve the existing site, and to a point, the proposed. The water lagoon is to add contingency, if you like.
Thank you very much. This question in regards to dead birds, if you, the site could easily operate a 4% loss on dead birds. If, God forbid, something happened, it could be more. It's quite a considerable number with the numbers that we're running of chickens in the shed. You know, up to 100,000 a year if that 4% is for each flock that's in turnover. What provision is there on this site to deal with those the dead birds that are gradually produced as a byproduct of this?
As per the report, dead stock is taken away. Those traffic numbers are included within the transport assessment. Was there some more detail you wanted?
So it's really the storage of the dead birds from the moment they're picked out of the sheds to being brought, put onto lorries and taken away, which obviously won't be an instant process. It's almost impossible for it to be an instant process.
Yeah, I'll just confirm that, but I believe they're in cold store effectively.
Okay, right, yeah.
Yeah, cold store and then taken away in the relevant collection.
Yeah, okay. And the second question, when feed's delivered to the site, it'd be maybe delivered by an Arctic. Is there room for that Arctic to turn around? And would it go around all the sheds and come down? Because from the map that I've seen, it doesn't look like it's absolutely easy for an Arctic to turn around, deliver food, and then turn around and leave the way it came in. Could you just? It might help if they put the map up for that. Would that be possible?
Does this help?
The plan of the new sheds, please. Yeah, there. So it doesn't seem absolutely obvious where an articulated lorry would go, because it looks quite tight for it to go all around the sheds. And obviously there's two types a feed delivery. There's your articulated lorry and there's your rigid lorry, but obviously this site would probably be better with articulated lorries.
See that link road? And they come back round.
Yeah, so effectively they circulate within the site, up over the top and back out.
All the way around, all the sheds and out the bottom?
Yes.
Is there enough space there to turn articulated?
Yes, obviously that was tracked on the design layout and most importantly including the transport assessment. Without stating the obvious, yeah, vehicles can circulate from all the businesses and out of the site.
Yeah, I think it's probably down to the scale of the drawing that it looks a lot smaller than it actually is, but yeah, thank you very much.
Thank you, Chair. I'm sorry, I'm going to come back to the rainwater harvesting. You mentioned that the existing site doesn't actually have a rainwater harvesting scheme. So would the new rainwater harvesting scheme service the whole of the site?
The issue is Essex and Suffolk Water granting new supplies. The operational farm doesn't need new supply, but obviously the poultry farm, the shed building business, the other business on site represent catchment, that's untapped at the moment, before you go on to the, land drains on the wider farm. So, yes, as been pointed to, rainwater harvesting is something that's been employed in the same way that solar panels are, just to improve efficiency of the running of sites.
So with the right scheme, the whole site could be water neutral?
Rainwater could be harvested across the site. It's all within the ownership. It's all operational, yes.
Okay, thank you.
No? Okay, thank you very much, Mr Rankin. We'll now move on to the ward member, Councillor Julie Flackman, please. Thank you.
Thank you, Chair. Davisons are a limited construction business, and they also specialise in the development of poultry sites throughout Norfolk and Suffolk. So this site is very important. They're their own customer. They're going to be building their own sheds. They employ 63 to 40 people. The surrounding workforce all comes mainly from the villages around. In this day and age, with the cost of living crisis, what's going to happen if we don't employ local people for local rural businesses? I could probably name 50 people who have already worked there and still have children work there. The site is huge. There is more than enough room for juggernauts, etc., to turn around there. They're a building business. They store their wood, etc. there. The problem we have with the roads, we all know there is a problem with lorries, with delivery of small goods as well. Years ago, our roads were used for horse and carts, let's face it. Are we going to stop all production? Are we going to stop all farming? No, we're not. We import 408 metric tonnes of poultry meat. We import it. There is not enough chicken in this country. We've had the avian flu. So many sheds are empty at this time, at a time when we need cheap, sustainable meat. What meat do young families buy? Poultry. They can't afford a £14 free-range chicken. They buy chicken. 3 for a tenner it used to be. I think it's 2 for 8 now because obviously the cost of living's gone up. What have we done with the water? The water, Essex and Suffolk, they've been raking in money. They haven't actually put in the infrastructure. We can still have 150 houses built in Stradbroke, but we can't keep a really well-established local business going. No. DEFRA have got a job on their hands to get involved with this and make the water companies invest. Invest the money they've taken from everyone else. That's the problem. They haven't done any infrastructure, and I hope DEFRA are going to get on the top of it now. I will be supporting. Thank you, committee.
Do we have any questions on there? No? Okay, no questions. Thank you very much, Councillor Flatman. Therefore, we open up for the debate, please. Who would like to kick off the debate? Councillor Stringer.
Yeah, I'll kick this one off. I find this one really, really difficult because on the one hand, we have a water company who I have to say rarely consult and you know, push the envelope here, and they've been quite explicit. We do not have sufficient water resources to meet the non-household demand of this development proposal. And we recommend planning permission to be refused and that a granting condition is used to, as a prelude to obligations being entered into. So they're being quite, they've set the bar incredibly high to say, look, we cannot service any extra here. And I agree that this isn't 100% addition because of your changing in space standards. It will eat into some of this shed space. However, we're also being asked that we need to enter into a condition that conditions all HGV delivery and traffic movements. Yet we don't know what they are because we don't know the exact regime that the water resource here will need of us, because that hasn't been bottomed out yet. So we're in somewhat a Gordian knot here. We're being asked to approve planning permission with a Grampian condition, but we don't know all the details of that condition. I would like to see that those obligations have been met. And I agree, perhaps the water company and haven't done their job historically, but it's our job here to make sure that what we do approve here is sustainable. And we're at a point here where it's, with what we've already got in our plans, we've used all the water. So we're now having to jump through enormous hoops, extend planning applications to put lagoons in to capture water. And equally, I'd like to see exactly how that's going to work, because whether we like it or not, we're entering extremes of what the weather gets up to in terms of dryness and also flash flooding. And if we're holding stuff in tanks that is also being used for washing, I'd like to make sure that doesn't enter a watercourse, which there is running straight through this site, according to the plans. So I would have liked to have seen an awful lot more detail in here before I said yes. So for me, is there enough here to refuse? No. I personally would defer this until we've seen the detail. Thank you, Chair.
Mr. Chair, thank you. We'll talk about a couple of things just so we're clear. The first thing is a Grampian condition. The Grampian condition, there's a bit of talk about outside the red line area. Actually, we're talking about a Grampian condition being applied to the water supply. And just so we're clear on what a Grampian condition is, because I'm sure some people aren't clear, the expression derives from a Grampian Regional Council versus City of Aberdeen and basically provides a condition precluding the implementation of a development permitted by a planning permission until some step has been taken is valid. And what that means is, if you go to the water element, which is what the Grampian condition is actually about in this, it says unless you satisfy this condition to supply this water, either by rainfall harnessing or boreholes or whatever else is mentioned within this clear report, then you won't go anywhere. So that's what the Grampian condition is for, that's what it's being used for, and that, I think, gives us the confidence that unless that is met, that this wouldn't take place. So that's a good thing, first of all, to make it sustainable, to prove the sustainability, to have the implementation of whatever system you come up with for the water storage in place before it's actually allowed to continue. So that's the first bit about the Grampian condition. I did ask about sustainability. It's used a lot here. Sustainable. It's not sustainable. No one ever says, what does sustainable actually mean? Well, I've already stated it. It means, and particularly in this condition, that effectively, when I find it, because I've got loads of notes because I've listened to loads here, that effectively that when I find a thing, bear with me, I've lost my grip. So, sustainable. It means, as I said before, able to upheld or defended, able to be maintained at a certain rate or level. Well, guess what? It can be. As long as the Grampian condition is in place and that water supply comes in, then this is definitely sustainable. And I don't think you can argue against that. It's a fact. Because unless we have it, it's not sustainable. With it, with the Grampian condition, it becomes sustainable. It can support. And it can support right now, can't it? So it's already sustainable. With the growth, they've already explained that you've got more capacity than actually required by 4. So that's a good thing as well. We'll carry on with the sustainability bit. We're talking about business sustainability. So at the moment, this business wants to modernise and it wants to grow. That's fantastic. And as the ward member said, we were talking about employment. We're talking about our drive to save the planet. So instead of importing millions and millions of chickens, let's grow our own. Let's make them local. Let's take them local. That's exactly what we're doing. So it's sustainable in that case as well, but only if this is allowed to go through and the business modifies and expands, because without it, the business is not sustainable. And actually, like I said, we look at our environmental pledge, that's not sustainable either unless we support local business, local growth, and allow these things to go through. We'll talk about the area. The area itself is suitable for this. It's already doing the job that it's doing and that's planned for the future. So I think that's a good thing as well. We talked about traffic, we talked about highways, but I've read this paper and highways say, and Masha, you made the point, that unless this is really dangerous, what's the problem? Well, I can't find anything in here apart from some subjective views, and they are really, to say that it's more dangerous than it is now. It is what it is. We can't make bigger roads. They are what they are. And actually, people don't drive there at 60 miles an hour because they can't. So, of course, there are going to be more trucks, but actually, it's not going to make it any more dangerous on the things that I've read here, including the crash map. So I think that argument's out as well. I just want to cover a couple more points before I finish, if you don't mind. Local, direct support, talk about sustainability, I've done all that. Yeah, I think I've covered most things. But I would like to summarise and say this is great. It's great because we're actually seeing a business that's willing to grow, is willing to modernise, is willing to think about the environment as a whole. An effect on the local area, I don't see any more effect than there is now. I can go down the odour route if you want, where the wind comes from the southwest, generally in the south of England, so therefore all the odour is taken away from most of the population that live in that area. So we can go on and on and on, can't we? The point I'm trying to make is I can't find anything in here that would actually refuse this application. I don't think we need any more information, and I think the purpose of this committee is to make a decision. And with the things that I've just spoken about, the things I've read, the things I've listened to from both sides, on a balanced view, I will be supporting this.
Councillor Caston, please.
Thank you very much. Yeah, I did a few calculations because I was thinking about this feed situation. The lorries coming in with the feed, and I worked out. I assume the sheds are staggered. They're not all the same age in the sheds. The oldest one's eating 160 grams per day. The youngest, and then it going right down to the new ones eating 32 grams of food a day. There'd be a need of just over 30 tonnes of feed to come into the site a day, which I think we've got to be careful that we don't get too excited about the impact of the feed lorries coming in, because that's one lorry a day and then an extra one at the end of the week to deal with that, and that's at the very much the highest it will go. This kind of industry is so important because there's not a massive margin to be made on this. People want cheap food, and we'd love to have all free-range birds. We can't possibly do that. There's a margin that I believe of about 50p per bird, if you're lucky, if things are good on this. So, therefore, to actually produce food in this way, we do need these large-scale sheds. I'm really pleased to hear that the space allowance that you're looking increase the space allowance. That would mean that it's of a better quality and a better welfare standard of anything we're importing short of free range. And also what this brings to people is the jobs. Also, working on an average consumption of 34 grams per week per person. This is producing about 250,000 people's annual consumption of chicken, which is quite incredible. It's the numbers are, looking through this, the numbers are absolutely huge, but I think this is necessary. And with these large sheds as well, a lot of the problems that you see in the smaller sheds, like flies, odour and everything, are actually a lot less in the larger sheds because they're built for purpose, they're managed well, and there's enough people to deal with it. You're not stretching the workers, and they have time to do absolutely everything, and it's done cyclically. So for me, I think this is a really needed business. I've looked around on Google Earth. I've seen how much of that type of business is here. It makes sense for it all to be in the same place, or a lot of it to be in the same place. And I've got no issue as long as this Grampian condition on a net zero water usage, or whatever the words are, is followed, because that means that we're not going to use any more water on. It's sustainable on that site for water usage, but I'll let the people that deal with that kind of thing every day and know a lot more about it than I know deal with that. So as far as I'm concerned, I'm happy with this application, and I will be looking to propose approval of it.
Okay, thank you very much. Can we have a seconder, please? Councillor Humphreys.
Mr. Chair, happy to second for all the reasons with the conditions set, including that Grampian condition on water neutrality. Thank you.
Okay, thank you very much. Councillor Stringer, please.
Just wanted to just elaborate on why I won't be supporting that in its current form. We heard a definition of sustainability, but it's the Development Control Committee, and the definition of sustainable development is that development that meets the needs of the present without compromising the ability for future generations to meet their own needs. If we don't get the water use right, it will fall at the first hurdle of sustainable development. So that needs to be correct. We've also heard that the water supply will come in, but we haven't actually been demonstrated where from. It'll either fall out of the sky, or it'll come out of a borehole, or it'll come in a lorry. And all I was wanting to have confirmed is what combination of those three will it be? Because if it's the majority the latter, then that will have an effect upon sustainability and traffic use, etc., which is why I wanted that information before I was in the position to make a rounded decision. Thank you, Chair.
Mr. Chair, thank you. I'd like to come back on that. Thank you for that other definition of sustainability. You're absolutely right, development. And this does provide for the present and the future. So it ticks that box. And I'd just like to confirm, if I could please, because I'm seconding this, I want to be right. I want to make sure I'm right for you, Councillor Stringer, that at the moment we're looking at rainfall harvesting. We're looking at the lagoon that does supply enough water for that area. Is that true?
That's correct. There's no requirement for water to be tankered in, providing additional vehicular movements above and beyond the submitted transport statement.
Thank you very much. Does anyone else wish to speak? Councillor Mellon, please, then Councillor Walker.
Okay, so I think this is not a clear application in terms of making an easy decision. I've worked in the poultry industry in this area. Except that we're moving towards a much more kind of efficient and more welfare-friendly sort of industry in fits and starts. And clearly it's better that we have local production than we have imports from areas where we don't control the kind of welfare standards. two major concerns for this application, and one is the impact on the highways network, and the second one is this concern about the water. So just to look at the highways thing first, going back to the MPPF, we've got a very strong paragraph that we have to get over, which is development should only be prevented and refused if there's an unacceptable impact on highway safety, or the residual cumulative impacts on the road network would be severe. And we have to take the word of our professional consultees very seriously. We don't have to accept it and swallow it, without comment or without examining it. But the highways have said that they don't think it's a severe problem. Clearly, there's more lorry movements than just moving the feed into this site. There's lorry movements bringing the raw materials to the mill. There's from the mill to the site. There's the birds have got to be coming in. The birds have got to go out. The litter's got to go out. Straw and so forth has got to come in, or whatever they use for bedding. So there's multiple different streams of stuff coming in and out, and obviously water's got to be tankered away as well and dealt with as well. So it's not just about the feed, it's much wider than that. And these roads are not wide, they're not, as the ward member said, they're built for horse and cart, and now we've got HGVs rumbling up and down. So I do have a concern about that. Is it enough? Does the MPPF allow us to refuse something on that basis? Probably not. The water thing is still a real big question in my mind. If that lagoon runs out, they will be clearly taking water out of the water main. They're not going to tanker it, we've just heard that. There's a water main that feeds the existing facilities. And therefore, if we do get into a drought situation, they will be putting extra stress on the network to produce that water, which Anglia Water, Essex and Suffolk Water said there isn't the capacity, and there isn't the possibility of a borehole because the aquifer can't take it. So I'm still really concerned about that, and I'm not entirely convinced that the Grampian condition is going to give us the answer that we really need, the surety. I'd certainly like to see some more information on that. So I'm sort of still ambivalent about this application. Some question marks in my mind. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Chair. A couple of things. First, I got like everyone else, I got a letter from Davidson Farms, which set out the economic ramifications of this development. So we're aware of that. The Cranwick chickens, I'm a little bit confused by Councillor Humphrey's contribution about growth. My understanding was it wasn't so much about growth, but about improved welfare conditions for the existing amount of product you have. That's correct. It's not more chickens overall. It's about better chickens, more space. So just to clarify that, it's not actually growing, but it's actually managing what's there in a better way. The bits about the traffic and particularly the water supply, the word that keeps coming to my mind is stress. There's only so much stress any sort of system can cope with. You can stress a system to a certain point and then it will break. And this is particularly true in traffic. 4.7% sounds tolerable, but it might be sort of moving towards a tipping point where there's too much stress on that road network. We're already in a water stress environment, and that covers the whole of Suffolk. 20 miles to the south, you've got Sizewell Sea. That was initially stopped by the planning inspectorate because there was no water, there wasn't sufficient fresh water to either build the site nor actually maintain it. That was overturned by the Secretary of State. In your final documents, you mentioned the Grampian conditions, and the mitigation, an update on the mitigation expected, this is page 75, which may need this to be the subject of a separate application. I think I do need to see that detail before I can wholeheartedly support it. We're in a stressed water environment. We've got housing developments throughout the region, and this is a site where there's the potential for water harvesting, which hasn't yet been, don't forget the pun, tapped. There's 3 sites within Stradbroke chicken suppliers that do practice water harvesting. So we could have information on how successful that has been and how that has achieved a water neutral production cycle. So it is a difficult situation. I'm very ambivalent. I do support the economic grounds for this, the welfare grounds for this, but I do not want to be in a situation of adding to the stress of the water environment by agreeing it without knowing the details that it is feasible. Anecdotally, last week there was a 90% chance of rainfall in Mellis. Not a drop fell. So that is a worry about the sort of future water supply, and that's where the sustainability really hits in. We've got the grampian condition, but I'd like to see the detail before it went forward.
Councillor Humphreys, then Councillor Hanning, and then Councillor Castle.
Mr Chair, thank you. Just to come back on the word growth, I'm talking about business growth, which means expansion, which improves the product, and that's what he's doing. Thank you.
Thank you. I'm happy to support this application, frankly, because we're being told by all our consultees that it's okay, and we're being assured by our own officers that that everything is under control, and it's, you know, and I know that people are concerned about the water, you know, but that's why it's being conditioned. If these things cannot be achieved, they will not be able to continue. I've lived within half a mile of this site, and I've never, like I say, the roads actually, although Julie says they might have been built for horse and cart, these are actually pretty good roads, and the only road that is, with only worry really, is Stradbroke Village, the primary school there. That is a narrow point, but that is only for the feed, and now if you looked at, that's only going to be 9 extra, you know, HGVs. And the main road to Dis and through everything else, they're great roads, and yeah, I'm really happy with this, so I'm happy to support it.
Thank you. I just wondered if, with this grampian condition, whether the legal team or anyone, if I could ask them if there's a way to strengthen that at all. I can hear what councillors want with that condition, and the more robust that condition can be, the better, really, for me. But
yes, I think that the detail might be more a matter for my colleagues sitting in front. But sorry, I need to make sure I'm speaking into the microphone. It's not very close to me. Get the computer out of the way. It's always, I think you've already explained, a matter whether a grampian condition should be imposed and whether it is likely to deliver the goods, as it were, or be unlikely of achievement, is a matter of planning judgment, which is a matter for, initially for Massa making the recommendation, and then for, obviously for you, ladies and gentlemen, as decision makers. Yes, I'm sure the officer will wish to make it as robust as is reasonable and is practically deliverable.
Yeah, perhaps I can. Thank you, Chair. So just having a look at the condition, there's a fair amount covered in there in terms of making sure that we've got the reservoir, the timeline for it to be filled, how it's going to be filled, and that. So there's quite a lot in there. I think in terms of adding, what we might be thinking is the detailed information on how much water the chickens need over time compared to what's in the reservoir, how long that might last. So we've got sort of all of the background information, so perhaps we can give some more reassurance that there is a fairly long lifespan to it, and to agree those details. So I think perhaps it might not be something I could suggest we add to the recommendation, but that Matter and I might need to take away to work into the condition itself.
Yeah, and I think if councillors want to talk about that, I'd be quite happy to listen to this proposal.
Thank you. Councillor Norris, you wish to say something?
Thank you. Yes, I have some concerns, but I'm not sure that there are sufficient grounds to refuse this application. I do understand the position that some of the committee are taking regarding the water supply, but this is an unknown quantity to a certain extent. Who can reliably predict rainfall in the future? I mean, that in the water element itself sufficient grounds to refuse this application. Highways have said on pages 56, continue to page 57, further to additional correspondence and information from the applicant's consultants for further site visit and consideration of the proposal, we are no longer in a position to uphold an objection on this proposal. Whilst the proposal will generate a modest increase in HGV traffic, it is not at a level that we can maintain an objection upon as having a severe or unacceptable impact, reference to NPPF treble 1 paragraph. It should also be noted that significant parts of the identified routes form part of the Suffolk lorry route network. So I do understand the concerns of local residents, but I don't think there are sufficient grounds personally to refuse this application, and that is my position. Thank you.
Right, does anybody else wish to speak? No. Okay, then I will have my say now. Thank you very much to all the contributors to this debate. It's been very, very interesting. I will be supporting this application for approval. I fully agree with the ward member. We need to keep those local jobs local for local people. We need to see businesses grow. We need to consider food security. I do accept the point about the water, but I'm satisfied with what the officers have said, that that can be dealt with. So I will be supporting this application. If there are no further questions, I would ask the governance officer to go to the vote, please. Thank you.
Thank you, Chair. Members, that vote is now in progress. Because this item was originally 7C on the agenda, it will be down at the bottom of your app, so make sure to scroll. Councillor Warboys, do you need me to take your vote verbally? Okay, thank you. Thank you, Chair. So that is 5 votes for and 3 against. So
Thank you very much. So that's carried. Thank you very much indeed. Thank you. I'd like to sort of have a 10-minute break. I'd now like to move on to item 7A, DC 2101457, land north of Pest House Lane, Barham, and I'll now invite the case officer, Jasmine Wyard, to introduce the application to the committee. Thank you, Jasmine.
Thank you, Chair, and good morning, members. I'm presenting a reserved matters application today for the erection of 20 dwellings, including 7 affordable units at land north of Pest House Lane, Barham. The reserved matters are appearance, landscaping, layout and scale. Members are reminded that this presentation does not seek to replace any of the information and detail within the committee report. It is solely to provide an overview of the application. So in terms of the planning history on the site, outline planning permission was granted subject to conditions and a Section 106 agreement which secured the affordable housing provision on site in 2019. So here we have the site outlined in red. The A14 is located to the west, and you've got a variety of dwellings in terms of their appearance and scale located to the north and east of the site, with a more sporadic cluster of development located south. There are a range of existing small-scale buildings on site, which you can see shown by the kind of grey rectangles, with the existing access previously approved under the outline to be upgraded to serve this residential development. In terms of site constraints, the site is wholly within flood zone 1. There are public rights-of-way running along the western and southern boundaries of the site, and the nearest listed buildings are shown by the orange, which are to the north, both of which are Grade 2 listed and comprise a public house and Barham Lodge. So in terms of surface water flood risks, so whilst the site is at a very low risk of fluvial flooding, which is the flood zone 1, the site has a variety of pluvial flood risk, which is the surface water flooding, ranging from low to high. So as you can see, it's primarily at a low risk, but there are pockets of quite high risk, mostly to the western side of the site. So here's the site layout plan. There's adequate parking provision provided for all units, some of which is within the garages that are provided on plot. A cycle and pedestrian cut-through would be created in the northeast corner of the site, improving the connectivity of the site, because this cut-through would bring users pretty much to the bus stops, which run regular services from them, which are located along Norwich Road and Sturgeon Way. The development would be a cul-de-sac type development, entirely enclosed by soft landscaping from Norwich Road and Pest House Lane, as you can see along the boundaries. Save for the parking and access to each plot, there's a mixture of grass, trees and hedgerows proposed internally around the road and footways to the frontage of the plots. And to resolve the surface water flooding issues on site as far as possible, a flood compensation storage area is proposed to the western edge of the site, as you can see. I don't know if the mouse is working. But yes, so to the western edge of the site, it's not working. So in terms of the existing trees on site, there are a range of existing trees dotted around, some of which are proposed for removal, but these have all been confirmed to be of a low value and the removal is kept to a minimum. Certainly all other trees are to be retained, and especially along the eastern boundary of the site, they're to be strengthened with new planting. In terms of the elevations, there are a range of house types proposed across the development, all of which utilise similar materials, so I'll just run through 3 examples. As you can see, they're of a traditional form with a modern vernacular. And notably, all of the affordable units on site are tenure blind by way of their design and materials. These images give you an idea of the overall street scene within this cul-de-sac setting. The built form would be broken up by soft landscaping, as I mentioned earlier, retaining a rural character. And in terms of, I've just got a few site photos. So The first photo on the left just shows the existing redundant buildings on site which are to be removed, which you can kind of see in the distance, and this is taken from the access point which was approved to outline. Then along the right is where the cut-through would come out on. Again, I can't use the mouse at the minute, I don't know why, but so in terms of where that cut-through would come out on, it would be right at the end of that road, and this is along Norwich Road. Then just in terms of the access point, so this is the left-hand photo is looking looking westward, along Pesthouse Lane, and then you've got towards, east towards the other end of Pesthouse Lane, which then joins onto Norwich Road. So the recommendation is therefore to approve these reserved matters for the reasons set out in the committee report. Thank you for listening.
Thank you very much, Jasmine. Do we have questions, please, for the planning officer? Councillor Haddingham, please.
Thanks. Just a quick one. Can you put the map of the flooding with the high and low risk on, please? Sorry. So some of the high risk is actually where the houses are going to be.
There is a very
Could you, is there any way you can sort of superimpose the actual indicative plan over that sort of thing, so you can actually see where the...
Yes, if I scroll down.
I just sort of think, is some of the housing on where it's high risk, or is it just, you know, can we not, because we can't see both at the
There
same
will
time?
be a very small element that is where some of the houses are. I think the key point, which hopefully comes through in the committee report, is that Suffolk County Council Floods and Water, they are unable to remove their holding objection. This is based on the fact that it is within their remit to deal with the surface water flooding. Outline permission was granted, and we have taken Council's opinion on the kind of principle of development and revisiting the flood risk. Yeah, so in terms of, I suppose, finding the best way forward with this, we have sought external flood risk advice, which does believe that the dwellings would be as safe as they can be for their lifetime and in effect doesn't increase flood risk elsewhere. The way that surface water flooding is modelled as well is slightly, is sometimes to do with the topography of the site. So it's not always, you know, you can see a very small pocket of high risk flooding, but it might not actually be the only bit of the site, if that makes sense.
Okay, thank you. Councillor Humphreys, please.
Chair, thank you. Whereabouts are the affordable houses? Thank you.
So, I don't know if, is the mouse working? I don't know if it's... There we go. So, I don't know if you can see there's kind of labels here and here, so they're along here and here. Because it's only a development of 20 dwellings, obviously it's quite a small development anyway. They are in obviously a kind of cluster on the site, but they're not exceeding the 15 that is normally the guidance point, and obviously if it's only 20 dwellings, then...
Any further questions, please? Councillor Warboys?
Thank you, Chair. Yes, I notice there's no response from Anglia Water, and we've actually sort of asked on, I mean, this is a relatively small development, I suppose, but we have asked Anglia Water that they produce details of how they're going to manage wastewater from a site and where it's going. I'm just wondering if it'd be appropriate to put in one of the conditions that there's a sort of water, we've got a sustainable energy statement and surface water. Could we have a water management condition in there as well?
So in terms of the foul water, which is what Anglian Water would be dealing with, they haven't provided comments on this application, but I think it's because they possibly have missed some of the information that was submitted alongside the application. I have since clarified with the agent that they are proposing to connect to the mains, and Anglian Water do have a statutory duty to make capacity for the flows. Indeed, if members wish to have a condition which specifically details details of foul water drainage to be submitted, that could be imposed. That's not a problem.
I think I quite like that actually. Yes, we've agreed this at the council meeting as well.
Thank you. Any further questions? None at all. Okay. Right. Well, we have no questions from any public speakers. We've got no objectors, no supporters. The agent's not here. But I do have a statement, a joint statement from the ward members. Sorry. Oh, apologies.
Yeah, I'm here, but...
You don't wish to speak on it? Okay, thank you very much. Okay. I'll read the ward member statement. This is a joint statement from Councillors Whitehead and Councillor Passmore. Thank you for the opportunity to submit this ward member statement on this application. When I addressed the committee back in March 2019 on the outline permission for this site, I concurred with the officer's recommendation for approval. Residents and parish councils in my ward are generally supportive of modest infill sites such as this one, in contrast to the much larger and more controversial applications that place an excessive strain on our local infrastructure. In the case of this application, I support these reserved matters with only one concern. That relates to the final condition included in the officer's report. That final condition removes all permitted development rights on extensions and outbuildings. Some of these plots have large south, east or west facing gardens, and I suspect many buyers of these properties, plots 1 to 4 and plots 15 to 20, may want to enhance their properties in due course with the addition of conservatories, garden rooms or garden offices. The committee may want to debate whether this blanket removal of all permitted development rights is a reasonable condition to impose going forward on those residents. Thank you. Right, so we move into debate. Councillor String, please.
Yeah, thank you, Chair. We're looking at reserved matters here on a scheme that already has outline approval. So to sort of almost go back on the flooding issue would seem sort of penal, really. And also these flood maps, you do get odd little pockets where there's an old midden or an old pit or something will show up that it could flood in that pocket. But in reality, once this is built out, it won't, because there's also a substantial amount of area for mitigation to flooding in this scheme. It's probably one of the biggest I've seen. I have to say, congratulate the applicant that they've managed to orientate most of the roofs so that they can benefit from solar gain in the present or even future. I quite like the design being quite modern without being pastiche. I quite like the fact it's got no fake chimneys on it. The only thing I would seek to try and beef up in this application would be, rather than looking at air source heat pumps, I'd actually like to see it, because in the absence of any other sustainable technology at the moment, we're almost in that VHS Betamax moment. If we could beef up the air source heat pump thing, I would move approval, Chair. Thank you.
Councillor Humphreys.
Mr. Chair, thank you. I'm going to move along the same lines as Councillor Stringer, obviously, on this one. The only comment I've got is what the ward member raised about the right for people to extend. You can get down the personal route on this. How would I feel? And that's the route I'm going to take. So how would I feel that I move into a nice house that's got ample room and my family gets bigger and I like the sun and I want to build a conservatory? How would I feel if I want to extend my house rather than move, because that's the most viable way of doing it, because it's too expensive to move? So for that, I would like to see the removal of that condition, or find a real reason why it's in there. Thank you.
Yes, so the reason that it is actually imposed is solely because of the flood risk. Ordinarily, permitted development rights are normally removed on an outline permission. They haven't been removed on the outline permission. Obviously, we are where we are. The reason that it's removed for things like hard standing, means of enclosure, extensions, outbuildings, is not to prevent anyone extending their house in the future. It just means that planning permission would be required. And the reason for that is so that we can assess that the flood risk is not increased obviously, if every one of those 20 dwellings decides that they want to extend their property, it can have a cumulative impact. In isolation, a single extension is probably unlikely to have that impact, but it's just to add that additional element of us being able to check it.
Yeah, sorry. So thank you. So it'd be written in when the person buys the house, somewhere in the contract would say, if you want to do it. We're not saying you can't, but you need planning permission. Yeah, thank you. Brilliant, thank you.
Does anybody else wish to debate? Councillor Caston, please.
Yeah, I think I'm following the line that we're going in. Yeah, it seems, for me, now that it's been explained about the permitted development rights, I'm not quite so worried about it. I think it is reasonably costly to get planning permission for an extension, but we do see permitted development extensions connecting storm water into sewers and things like that, so it does make sense that we go through that process. And I understand that we could end up having a lot more runoff on the site than we expect if it happens a lot. So I'm quite happy to take guidance from the proposer and the seconder for that. Apart from that, I think this issue with air source heat pumps, yeah, I completely agree with the proposer. And if we can strengthen that, or say we want air source heat pumps in there, I think that would be a lot more future-proof. So I don't know what can be done on that, but I'm happy to agree with this, agree with the proposer now, but I just take some guidance on there and then see what the proposer and the seconder feel about those two, the permitted development and the air source heat pumps issue.
Thank you. Jasmine, the air source heat pumps, would that be possible to add as a condition? Or?
So I think we could build it into the sustainability condition. I think in terms of, obviously the applicant had expressed that, you know, it's something that they'll be looking to do anyway. A lot of this will, I don't know if the agent may be able to...
I think it's a bit irregular, but if it's helpful.
Yeah, if it helps, can you... Yes, it would be most helpful. Can you come down to the chair in the front, please? Thank you. Yes, yeah. It would be helpful if you can clarify that position for us. Thank you.
Thank you, Chairman, and apologies for sort of like abrupt interjection. Yeah, it's the way to go, and I think you know, sort of we and the applicant would be very happy to accept that as a condition. It's got to happen.
Thank you. That's much appreciated. Thank you. Okay then.
Then yeah, just to sum up, yeah, I like this. I like the affordable housing that's in there, and I like the fact that it's walking distance from a co-op. It's a good application, so yeah, I'll be voting for the proposal.
Thank you. Do both the proposer and the seconder, are they both happy with the inclusion of a condition about air source heat pumps? Yeah. Councillor Warboys, please.
Thank you, Chair. I'm quite happy with that notion. Just following from Councillor Caxton's remarks about the sort of sewage and rainwater runoff, could we just have the water management condition included as well?
What sort of water management, is it a specific, i.e. are we looking at kind of foul water? Just because if we're relating it to flood risk matters, the kind of SUD strategy has been extensively worked up, and I don't think that there's any more we can do in terms of the actual surface water flooding. If it's more to do with the foul water, we can certainly get details of it, but they have confirmed that they are to connect to the mains through angling water.
Yeah, and I was thinking, well, it's a topic this today, but this is a domestic situation. We could actually look at sort of brown water harvesting and rainwater harvesting in order to sort of mitigate against that surface runoff. And
I think that's certainly covered within the sustainability measures condition as our kind of standard condition. It does talk about water efficiency measures. So that's certainly something we can emphasise further in that condition.
I think water efficiency measures just about covers it. Thank you.
Councillor Mellon, please.
Yeah, generally happy with most things on this application. I will just point out, as Councillor Warboys raised it earlier, that we did pass a motion back in November at the Council unanimously, and the fourth point of that was that planning officers from now onwards include in all reports relating to major development a specific section on the impact on watercourses, including the potential for the development to result in untreated sewage outflow into watercourses, or to flag if this information is not fully available, so that the lack of information is clearly and transparently set out. I mean, I will be asking regularly for this to be included. We decided as a council that's what the information we want to see. It's not here in the report. All we've got is Anglian Water no comment. So I don't feel that fits what we agreed as a council in a change to our procedure. Maybe one for Gemma rather than you. But anyway, I just want to make that point. It won't stop me voting for this one, but I would like to see that information in future.
Thank you very much. Does anyone else wish to comment at all in the debate? No. Well, I must admit, I will be supporting this application. Therefore, we now have a proposer and a seconder, so could I ask the Governance Officer, please, to go to the electronic vote?
Thank you, Chair. Members, that vote is now in progress. Thank you, Chair. That is 8 votes for, so that is unanimous.
Thank you very much indeed. Thank you very much, Jasmine. So I'd like to move straight on to the next one. We'll give a few minutes for the changeover. So if anyone wants a quick 5-minute break, please feel free. The changeover's done. I'll resume it B, which is DC 2206214, I Airfield Industrial Estate, I Road, Broome, IP23 8AW, and I'd now like to invite the case officer, Daniel Cameron, to introduce the application to committee, please. Thank you, Daniel.
Thank you, Chair. Members might remember a previous application on this site, DC 21. It was a DC 21 application, and the actual number escapes me, but I'll come to it when I get to it in the report. This is for an erection of a B8 storage building on I Airfield. You'll see from the plans that it's directly adjacent to the other 10 B8 storage buildings that have been erected on I Airfield. This is the aerial map of the site. You can see the application site outlined in purple and orange, with the other various B8 storage uses lined here. There's some pole barns for storage related to agriculture located just off here. We've got slightly wider view. You can see the edge of Yaxley, Thrandeston, Barham up in the north, and then the very edge of I as well. With regards to constraints, there aren't too many. We've got a Grade 2 listed building off to the west, some distance away, and we have a footpath that connects into this bridleway, comes down, runs down the side of the A140, and then makes connection in here. It runs adjacent to the site, but not within it, and you'll see from the plans the provision is made to not obstruct the route of the footpath, and then this continues across the airfield. During the site visit, there's a gap in the protective fencing around the edge and a bridge over the ditch to allow pedestrians to cross over. I have noted the comments from the British Horse Society and their desire to upgrade it to a bridleway. However, we've also consulted the Public Rights of Way team, who'd be responsible for the maintenance and the upgrading works, and they haven't made any suggestions that they would like to see the upgrades made here. In any case, it would bring any horse users into conflict with quite heavy traffic on the A140, so it's not seen to be desirable in this instance. There are no tabled papers before you, members, and we have the report before you. I do have an update to the recommendation, and I will come to that presently. In terms of objections, we have Broome and Oakley Parish Councils wanting to see the footpath signed and maintained and light pollution kept to a minimum. The public footpath is already signed and maintained. With regards to Thrandeston and Yaxley, concern is raised about additional floor space being created on I Airfield and potential impacts of flood waters on those villages. And we also have a holding objection from the flood and water team. I had hoped to be in a position to give a verbal update to members on their position. Unfortunately, the water engineer was involved in a public inquiry in the past couple of weeks and is behind on responses. I did speak to them informally. They would quite like to see the additional information they've asked for come forward from the applicant, and I will be ensuring that comes forward, and therefore the recommendation before members would be altered to delegate authority to the Chief Planning Officer to grant planning permission on the proviso that the flood and water team are happy and are content that we go ahead. In all other respects, we have no other objections from statutory consultees or representations from neighbours speaking to object to the application. If we have a look at the proposed site plan, we've got some existing SUDS features off to the west, and it's proposed that these be extended and improved as they were for the additional applications to the north when they came forward. In total, we're looking at a 1.49 hectare site, but some of that is taken up with the access to the site, such that the actual footprint of the building is smaller. It measures 114.9 metres in length, 45.6 metres in width, and 11.4 metres to the ridge and 8 metres to its eaves. I'll show you the site photos later on, but the materials and the design are proposed to match the other B8 storage buildings on the site. Importantly, there are no industrial processes proposed to be going on within the building. It's purely for storage. We have no planned equipment, machinery, air conditioning within the building. We only have lighting. and the building lighting is to be powered by the wind turbines on site, such that it should be powered 100% by renewable sources, except for days when the turbines are incapable of producing electricity. You can see here the boundary fencing on one side on the previously approved building. We then have this run of hedgerow that's proposed to maintain, and this is the run of the public footpath between, so it would always be open and able to be accessed. You can see the wind turbine and those pole barns mentioned earlier in the background. And then here we have the view back up to the access. So it's proposed grey cladding with red detailing. With regards to the first application, members will remember that that was located in the Hartsmere Water Resource Zone. This application is located in the same zone as well. With regards to that, it's explained in more detail in the report, but the concluding points are that while the use is non-domestic, there is no water supply proposed within the building. If we jump back to the floor plan, there's no staff break area, there's no toilet area. Even if there were, those uses would likely be seen as akin to domestic by Essex and Suffolk Water. And therefore, we could have those in here if they were required, but we have no water resource coming into this site whatsoever. So therefore, the building itself is water neutral in terms of its use. There are other facilities for staff working on site provided elsewhere on the site, so they don't need to be provided here. And on that basis, we don't need the same Grampian condition because we have no water use. Members will note that at the final section of the report, we have included a condition that states the use of the building will be B8 storage only, and that just protects the council in a similar way that the condition on the previous application did with regards to flood risk and extension to those properties. This will prevent a change of use to bring a manufacturing process that required water into the site without a planning application. Therefore, we'd be able to make sure that we have those water neutrality details either present within the application or could require them via Grampian condition, as we did with the first application. I'll pass back over to members and I'll take questions that may have arisen as a result of the report, and I'll look to support you in any debates that you have going forward.
Thank you very much, Daniel. Over to you, members. Who would like to kick off the questions? Councillor Stringer, is that your hand raised? Yeah.
I'm just trying to find this is one of the problems with having so little in the documentation. Right, I've now found it. Okay, we have a policy that says if a non-domestic building is more than 1,000 square metres, it shall then produce energy. You suggested it was going to be connected to the wind turbines that are on site, but they're not part of the application. They're not in the site area. So therefore, why are we not conditioning solar panels on the roof of this building?
If members feel that that would be appropriate, then it's completely within the scope of their decision-making powers to include that. Should they want to support the amended recommendation, as I've verbally given it to them, we could do. The applicant said that the provision from the wind turbines should be sufficient to power the building. It's a very low power building itself in terms of there's limited external lighting, and internally the lighting would only be utilised during working hours. But if members felt that that was appropriate, then we could move forward with the condition.
But yeah, I mean, the application is just around the building and its perimeter and its access. They could flog it off tomorrow. There's no such, we couldn't guarantee that would be in place. We have a policy that says, that's what buildings should do if they're non-domestic. So this building isn't doing it. It's just tacking on to existing renewable energy that happens to be on site. That is due to come down, I think, in 12 years' time now, isn't it? Because they're only there for a short period, the turbines. They had a 20-odd year licence, didn't they? So, Personally, I'd like to see us uphold that policy, because we've been, I think, somewhat inconsistent with that policy in the past. I think we should uphold it.
Okay. Any further questions, please? No. Well, we have no speakers at all, nothing from the ward member, so therefore I'll open up the item for debate. Who'd like to kick off the debate? Councillor Caston.
Just say something for the sake of it, then. This is the right place for this type of warehousing. It's there's very little harm that's going to be caused by putting it there. The space is there. It makes sense to have these all in the same place. Jobs-wise, I don't know exactly how many jobs it delivers, but it's all good. It has a knock-on effect as well throughout mid-Suffolk, having that facility. The only thing that I think we need to be talking about is what Councillor Stringer said about the solar panels, because he's right, it is policy. We should be doing it. I wouldn't like to see solar panels put on there that aren't connected to, aren't useful, because obviously in the manufacture and in putting them there, there's a certain amount of cost to the environment and shipping and everything like that. But I do understand. I think he makes a very good case. And what the question is because it's policy, do we just do it because it's policy? Which I'm sure if they've got power coming off there, they'll do something with it, or they'll do something with the wind turbine power generated. But I'm sort of a bit on the fence about that. I don't want to see solar panels that aren't needed, but also I think Councillor Stringer's right. If that's the policy, that's what we should be asking for, and that's what we should be getting.
Yeah, the policy is that it should generate, I think it's 20% of its own energy use from renewable sources. It's not specific. But we do spend an inordinate amount of time here deciding where solar panels should or should not go. And we have a policy that says the first place they should go is on the roof of non-domestic buildings. So what I'm suggesting is if we want to release the pressure from agricultural land, we need to start standing up and putting them on our commercial buildings. And this is one such building. And I would be happy to second an approval on this, or support the approval, if it had a condition that meant an element of solar panel went on this roof. Thank you.
Yes, certainly.
Thank you very much. So, yeah, I totally agree with what you're saying, but it's really limited by the infrastructure that we've got there and where, the cables in the ground, because, for me, this would be great if this whole place turned into a solar farm, but you need to have the connection, the grid connection, and it needs to be of a capacity to take it, and we don't really know.
We do. There's a 44 megawatt burner next door to it, and gas-fired power station now being built. We don't think it's lacking in energy infrastructure.
Well, in my world, I think you'd definitely apply for a connection and turn that into a solar farm. I don't know. I don't really know enough about the electrical infrastructure there to say that it would definitely be useful.
Okay, Daniel, then it'll be Councillor Warboys and Councillor Humphreys.
Just to help members in their debate, we do have a condition suggested, such that we get submission of a scheme of water, energy and resource efficiency measures for the construction and operational phase. That could be amended in its wording to include delivery of PV within Building 11. So that could be a way forward if that helps members resolve this question.
Okay, thank you, Daniel. Councillor Warboys, please.
Yes, thank you, Chair. I think I was just going to come on to what Councillor Stringer said and Councillor Caxton. In terms of a site, there's a proposed gas power station. They're building gas capacitor facility across the road. There's an existing power station which burns, it doesn't burn chicken litter anymore, it burns wood. So this will be an ideal site, I should imagine, for not just on this site, but actually sort of building, as Councillor Caxton suggested, a solar farm, which would save building a similar size capacity on agricultural land. So I'm quite happy to support this application. I think the existing buildings and the proposed finishes and the livery, it is a quality site. And this would carry on. And it's quite nice to see it aligned with the rest of the buildings, but I understand to get that size of building on the site, that would have to be tilted, otherwise you lose that amount of space. It's good to see that the footpath is emphasised. I agree with the officer. I think upgrading it to a bridleway would add some concerns. There's particularly horses crossing the main road. So I think it's an excellent proposal, and I'd like to propose to accept it with the added recommendation, as the officer said, about that we beef up the energy efficiency. We've noted there's electrical vehicle charging points, and that the site should be at least self-sufficient by the use of photovoltaic cells, if not an actual net energy producer.
Okay, thank you very much. Can we have a seconder for that, please? Councillor Humphreys.
Mr. Chair, yeah, I will support this, and I'll definitely second that proposal. I think we need to beef it up a little bit, though. We've turned down solar panel farms on agricultural lands for all the reasons, and during those debates, and I've been party to them, we've actually said we should be using old hangars, new warehouses, whatever it might be, with this massive area that we can use and get it off the ground. And here's the ideal opportunity. So what I would like from the officers, if the proposer is in agreement, is that we need a very beefy recommendation, almost a condition, well, it is a condition, to state that's what we want. Let's not say we'd like it, it's what we want, it's what we need, and it's what we should have. So I'd like you, if you could, just to work on that, if you're happy, Roland.
Yeah, no, I completely agree with that. I think it's quite complicated, because you'd need to apply for a grid connection, and I assume they're owned by different people. So you'd want to encourage a consortium maybe to get together, get the grid connection and do it, which you'd think that it would be an absolute no-brainer for them to do. If we're looking at solar farms on land and people are willing to pay money for hectares of land with solar panels on, you'd think that this would just make money. But I think I'd like to hear what officers think that would look like, because I'm quite happy for this to be an officer delegated. You know, the will of this committee is for it to be a net producer of electricity, but it's obviously extremely complicated to do that with this one planning application, this red line, and where we are.
Thank you, Chair. Yeah, what I would probably suggest is that we look to clarify the sustainability condition and that it includes a requirement for solar panels. The issue we've got slightly is that we can only require the 10% per the policy, so I would leave it open to a degree in the condition that we're going to include a requirement for solar panels. And if we get more, that's what we can support as officers. If we only get the 10%, we couldn't refuse it, but we know that we're securing at least that by the solar panels, and if they come in with more, we can support that if members are content with that.
Yes.
Yeah, I think it sets a very good precedent that we can then use in the future to support other applications, and I think that's part of the reason we need to push this. So yeah, thank you.
I'd just like to say, it's obviously not a planning committee, but I think Mid-Suffolk, exactly what they should be doing is facilitating this kind of thing to happen outside of the planning process, but with economies, we should definitely be looking. This is the perfect site to do something like that, and if Mid-Suffolk could help with that in any way, I think that's what we should be looking at doing. But yeah, no, I'm happy with the proposal, and yeah, happy to vote for it.
Yeah, thank you, Councillor Cassidy. Yes, I too am very happy with this application, and I totally support the amendment that Councillor Stringer actually raised in the first place. So if no one else wishes to speak, I will ask the governance officer to go to the electronic vote. Or did you want, Gemma, did you want to read out the...
Well, it's just we had a tweak from the recommendation compared to the paper, so I just wanted to clarify if that's
Please
okay.
do, yeah.
Yep, so we're delegating to the Chief Planning Officer to confirm surface water drainage with Suffolk County Council Floods and Water, subject to this to approve as the recommendations on pages 44 to 45, including any conditions requested by Suffolk County Council Floods and Water, and with the clarification that the sustainability condition includes a requirement for solar panels. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Everyone happy with that? Thank you very much. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Chair, members. That vote is now in progress. Thank you, Chair. That is 7 votes for. So that is unanimous.
Thank you very much indeed. I'd like to move on to item 8, site inspections.
None received, Chair.
Thank you very much. Well, the next meeting of the Development Control B Committee will be on the 29th of March 2023. So I now formally close the meeting at 12:04. Thank you very much, ladies and gentlemen. Thank you for your time this morning.